You know,
Next year.
I was
sharing the
going to,
love.
but then I didn't.
We're sharing the love through the budget document.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So this is with respect to the planning. I'll be covering the planning, agriculture budget, the forestry budget, and the trails budget. In terms of the planning budget, the proposal is an increase of just over $44,000 compared to 2018. The planning operating budget provides funding for essentially the planning function for the department, whether it be reviewing and processing applications submitted to the county, reviewing and commenting on local applications, NEC applications, conducting studies and projects. Planning budget also includes the coordination of civic addressing and payment to Owen Sound Police Services for the operation of the 911 dispatch for the entire county. With respect to the planning operating budget, the one main change with this budget is the proposal to continue with a contract planner position. This position is to assist with development applications as well as assisting with new and ongoing projects. The proposal is to fund this position from reserve, which essentially would be utilizing surplus planning application revenue from 2018 based on significant increase in applications received last year. So that report that Kevin mentioned earlier about us bringing back in terms of parking reserves, we have significant surplus in planning as a result of those applications, so we're using essentially some of that money to fund this contract position. On the planning capital budget, we're proposing $50,000 to undertake a climate change action plan. This is the one that Anne-Marie mentioned that we're going to try and work together, provide a joint RFP to look not only in the energy side from Anne-Marie's needs, which is also part of this, but also looking at an overall climate change action plan to identify local actions to mitigate and help increase resilience to the effects of climate change. This $50,000 is to be funded from reserves and therefore has no levy impact. We may not require the full $50,000 as we were able to partner with the University of Guelph master's students to at least start this project for us, which is being done at no cost. And we're bringing back a report next committee of the whole meeting about that project partnership. Some other items in the capital are setting aside funds to help pay for future studies. So studies that are going to happen in the future, things like development charge review, as well as future official plan updates, even though it seems like, well, we're still waiting for the province decision. We're still parking money aside so that when we go to do an update in a few years' time, we have that money set aside. We are also proposing funds to replace a large format plotter scanner that the corporation uses. It's primarily used by planning and transportation. The current plotter scanner has a 5-year warranty which expires this year, and therefore we've been putting aside funds each year to replace that this year. So that's the planning piece. If there's any questions?
Questions, anyone on planning? Councillor Bartnicki?
Why are we putting the 4,000 into the reserve if we're spending the 20,000 to buy?
So that goes back similar to what the previous question was too. So essentially what we've done is we've parked $4,000 each year into reserve for the last 5 years so that we spend 20,000. So 4,000 is going in, but then 20,000 is coming out. And just like we parked 4,000 for the past 4 years. So if that makes sense.
It does now.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, Councillor Mackey?
Thanks, Warden. Randy, can you be a little more specific about what our goals and objectives of the climate change money is? I mean, the feds are doing it, the province is doing it. Is it something the county really needs to do?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden, I think based on what we saw in the Made in Ontario Environment Plan is that the province is actually looking for municipalities to really put forward more of a concerted effort in terms of how we can address overall climate change. So we really want to focus this on what we can like tangibly produce and do here in the county, whether it be operationally from a county perspective. So we'll look into those aspects, but as well as broad policy perspectives in terms of what we can do from a stormwater management perspective, things like that. So things, you know, it's impacts that we can do locally that we think won't necessarily hopefully break the bank, so to speak, but things that we can introduce as best practices whether it be through development process or other things to help address and mitigate against climate change. We've identified this as a project in the new official plan as something that we need to look at. We flagged some really high-level policies in the new official plan, but we recognize that we need to do a bit more of a concerted effort and have a bit more of an action plan. Depending on the results that we get from the University of Guelph students, we'll see where we're at. We hope that they'll make some really good headway. And then like I said, we may not need that full $50,000. As I mentioned, we are proposing to fund that out of an energy reserve that we have. That way it doesn't have a levy impact. We can bring back some further information though in terms of what we're hoping to capture as part of that study, and we'll address some of that in the report with the University of Guelph, and mention that where we think we will go from that research and that study. Next is the agricultural budget. So this includes costs associated with enforcing the county's forest management bylaw, which is contracted to Gray Sawbull. The ag budget also includes grant payments for the harvesting of nuisance beavers and coyotes. It also includes contributions to agricultural organizations such as Gregg Services and the 4-H Club. Just after we finalized the budget, we did receive a letter from Gregg Services requesting an increase to their contribution from $25,000 to $35,000. Gregg Services provides excellent services to farmers across Grey County. I've had many conversations with farmers over the years, and they are very thankful to have Gregg Services assisting them. In fact, I think we're the envy of the province in terms of having that support for farmers locally. In addition to organizing the very popular Grey Bruce Farmers Week, which is a conference that brings together excellent speakers on a variety of topics, they provide a number of services to farmers, including agricultural information, referral services, and educational events. We have partnered personally with Gregg Services on a number of projects and events over the years, and their knowledge and connections in the ag sector is priceless. We started providing a financial contribution to Gregg Services in 2004, and that was what is currently in the proposed budget, which is $25,000. This has remained static for over that now 15-year period. It should also be noted that Grey County does provide space to Gregg Services at Grey Gables. The budget also includes funding for computer software and hardware acquisitions because they are on our network. So we, from a security standpoint, we want to make sure their software and hardware is up to date, just like the rest of our computers. Using the Bank of Canada Consumer Price Index, $25,000 in 2004 is worth close to $32,000 in 2018. So therefore, we're recommending that council support the request to increase to $35,000. What we're recommending is we, for this year, we fund that from reserve, so that way there's no impact to what we're proposing as the levy. And then tie cost of living increases going forward so that we're not faced with any given spike in any given year. So that is an adjustment that we're proposing to make in the agriculture budget.
Councillor McQueen?
I think that's great news. Is that working? Yeah. I think that's great news, Randy, that you're supporting that. I think you're right, that they do offer a great service for Grey County. I think one other thing that it does need to be mentioned, that since the Bill 73.
The minimum wage increase? Was the minimum wage
No,
increase?
no, that was the one with the planning committee.
Oh, okay, yes, yes.
And I think we sort of adopted the ag services as part of that source to get input.
Yes,
Well, I think there's some value that has included on that part.
yeah, absolutely.
And that was I forget how that Bill 73 was worded. I think I got the right bill. But it was with regards to the changes that for commenting or for, help me out here.
Yeah, I know there was a discussion about whether or not we want to have a county agriculture advisory committee and linked to that. I'm not sure if it's linked to that piece, but.
There was a bill a few years back came out that you needed a input, community advisory committee that was needed to part of that Bill 73, and we looked at not doing that, but we looked at using the ag services,
Yeah.
Those commodity groups to be that
Absolutely.
public part.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's where we have utilized Gregg Services just for that. So as part of our official plan review process and our new official plan, they were involved throughout that process, providing input from an agricultural sector perspective. So it's things like that that we've utilized Greg's services, and like I said, the value that we're getting there based on the services that we hear that farmers are getting is, in our opinion, worth the increase.
Councilor Milne?
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and yeah, I would echo that the Grey County farmers do appreciate the work that they get from that office. Do we get a, excuse me, a financial statement from them to show what they are using their funds for? And the other part of my question would be, what would be the nature of the increase that they needed? Like, is it just for operating, or do they have some other costs that they were seeking to cover with the additional money?
For you, Mr. Warden, we don't get a actual financial statement, but I know they'd be willing to share that. We can also have, if council is interested, have Ray Robertson and his team appear as a delegation and just to share some of the services that they do provide. With respect to some of their requests in the letter, they noted that the minimum wage increase has had an impact on them. And in fact, they noted that they lost 2 staff members as a part of that, just because they noted that they didn't want to leave Greg's Services because it's a great organization, but there was another opportunity that paid a little bit more. So a good portion of what the increase is for operational expenses related to some of the minimum wage increase and other things that they wanted to try to keep up with, so that they can maintain the current staff that they have.
Councilor Soever?
Yes, just going back a little bit to the planning budget, if we might. Looking at it, the increase looks rather small when you compare it to the 2018 budget, but when you compare it to the 2018 actual, it's actually about almost 50%. So the budget last year for expenses was 767, but we only spent 609, and this year we're budgeting 800. So that's almost a $200,000 increase from what was actually spent. When you look at the 767, it's only a 4.25%, but when you compare 609 to 800, that's 33%. So could you comment on why that looks that way?
For sure. I can't remember the exact date on the actuals. End of November? So there will be some expenses on the actual from that. A good portion of that is because of the application fee revenue. So I don't know if you notice that we budgeted $53,000, which has been the 5-year average for the past 5 years. And I know it's higher than this at year end, but it's 167,000 is in revenue. We've received a significant amount of applications in 2018. It's kept us quite busy. So a good portion of that is a result of that. I don't know if there's anything further. Okay, yes. Yeah. That's the other part too. So, we had some staff vacancies and some changes as a result of that. So there was at one point early on in 2018 we didn't have full staff contingent until about May is when we started hitting full staff contingent again. So that's also another reason why it shows lower than average. So.
Okay, yeah, that's about 100,000 of that.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Mackey.
Thanks, Warden. Randy, just to finish off on agriculture, the rent, is it free rent that we supply the Ag Society? Or,
Yes, yeah, and we have you'll see on the line in the agriculture budget's transfer to long-term care as a portion of that. I don't know if Kevin can explain that further in terms of.
so my question is just, what would so 35,000 we're giving, in cash, what would the rent supplement, what would that equate to? Just so I have a general idea of how the county's supporting the ag services down there.
Yeah, in the 2019 budget, it would just be under 22,000, the value from a rent perspective.
All right, thank you.
Councilor McQueen?
Just for the Counselor from Southgate. Mr. Millen, there is a website called the Greg Ag Services. Sorry, Brian Millen, sorry. I was thinking about something else. Not about you. It's all good, it's all good.
It's always good.
Yeah, so there is a website called Gray Ag Services that does talk about what they do. They're very involved with Georgian, the Soil and Crop Association. The big highlight is the Grey Bruce Farmers Week. It's on there too. So, and I know they like 7 days of, like if you're able to get to it next year or whatever, it's a great event and has all different aspects of the agri. And I'm not here to do a commercial, but I'm just saying that there is a website that does help explain a lot of that information and stuff like that.
Yep.
And the other one I wanted to follow up on with you, Randy, was Bill 73, and it did talk about municipalities must create planning advisory committees with public representation, and that's where we were checking that box off with using the Gray Ag Services. So.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Warden, too. We also addressed that through, we expanded our economic development and made it an economic development and planning advisory committee as well. But we recognize that from an agriculture perspective, it's partnering and reaching out to organizations like Greg Services to really hear the farmer voice, so to speak.
Okay.
Okay. Forestry budget. So with respect to the forestry budget, includes a net departmental requirement of just over 63,000, which is an increase of just over 35,000. Forest revenue for 2018 is estimated to be just under 90,000, which is a reduction of in revenue of just under $12,000. We have seen declining forest revenue over the past few years, some of which is due to regeneration from previous harvests taking more time than what we anticipated, as well as market factors. We're working with Grace Sauble and Conservation Authority and Purchasing to look for opportunities to try and increase the number of bids on our forest harvests, and to also look to logging companies and asking them if there is a better date to release those tenders so that we can get more bids and hopefully get some higher bids as well. To offset the decrease in forest revenue that we've experienced over the past couple of years, we're proposing a continued transfer from forestry reserve of 15,000, and in that forestry reserve, we've historically parked where we've had really good revenue some years. We've parked some of that in that forestry reserve so that we can balance off when we don't have as high a revenue as we anticipated. We are also planning to finalize the forest management plan update in 2019, and we've been working with Grace Sauble over the past 3 years on that project. The budget includes an additional 5,000 to finish that project up this year. The forestry budget also includes funding for maintenance work, signage, and trail improvements within our county forests, and some of these funds have been carried over from 2018 to tackle any priority projects and recommendations from the Recreational Trails Master Plan, which is slated to be completed this year. That's the forestry piece. And then the trails
And
budget.
proceed, yeah.
So the trails budget provides funding for the management of the CP Rail Trail. And the proposed trail budget, both operating capital proposes a net requirement of just under 144,000 compared to 148,800 in 2018, which is actually a decrease of just under $5,000. The trails capital budget provides funding for the replacement of 2 culverts in 2019 on the CP Rail Trail. These are known as culverts 7 and 5A, as well as funding for the pre-planning and design work associated with culvert 80. The rehabilitation replacement of culverts and bridges is based on needs identified in the 2016 Bridge and Culvert Assessment Report, as well as based on information and assistance that we get from Transportation Services, which is also very invaluable. These projects are funded from the Trail Reserve, and what we do is we put a transfer to reserve every year to keep the levy requirement consistent rather than fluctuating on a year-to-year basis. So the proposed transfer is $75,000, which is the same as 2018. And that's the trails. I'd be happy to take any other questions. Okay,
Good,
I
thank
think
you.
economic development is up next.
With council's indulgence, are you okay? In Savannah's absence, and Steve is here, I'll speak to this, but are you okay if I do it from here? Is that okay? Okay, all right, thank you. So the economic development budget for 2019 is showing an increase of $121,000, so from 715 to 837K. The budget continues to build on the work identified in the Economic Development Strategic Plan, and our specific focus is on investment readiness and economic growth. This budget is broken down, as you can see, into several sections. The general operating section, really the increase of $35,000 there really reflects a conversion of a half-time admin position into a full-time economic development officer position. This is a report that came to the previous council last fall. This is also the place where the funding is for young professional network mixtures, which we've had great success with, as well as the community profiles that the county undertakes on each of your municipalities' behalf, and provides support and materials to foreign direct investment initiatives. The next part of the budget, regional attraction and retention. This is a project that was discussed with the Economic Development Committee last term, and we hope to move that forward this year. What was identified was that we had significant challenges across the county in the health sector, and so we wanted to excuse me, have a project that would allow us to work with the hospitals, with long-term care and others to put forward some initiatives that would either help to grow, attract students to this field by giving them opportunities, as well as attracting new employees from outside of the area. So that's what that project is for $10,000. Page 70 in your package reflects the final contribution to the SWIFT project of $216,000, so we'll be paid up at that point. And then page 71, new to Gray was an OMAFRA RED project that Jacinda Rudolph has been working with. Some of you attended the forum for that at Blue Mountain Resort earlier this year. So now the project is just wrapping up as of March 31st, but what we've learned and the connections that we've made will be integrated into Jacinda and the county's work going forward. Page 72 in your package speaks to the Sydenham campus, the community hub project there. And you can see that that was proposed as a net zero budget with revenue, tenant revenue coming in, and expenses for the running of the building being offset. I will say that Georgian College, who was one of the anchor tenants for that facility, is still undertaking some significant planning work at this time. I think you can expect that likely in the second quarter, you'll have a report come back with some more definitive numbers. They've been waiting for approvals of apprenticeship programs and from the Ministry of Education that will assist them with that. The Business Enterprise Center that came to Gray County last year so that it could function on a regional level. It has 2 full-time staff and grant funding from the province to support the majority of its operation. We are required under the contract with the province to provide $15,000 into the operation of the Business Enterprise Center. A lot of the money that comes in there is really meant for direct support to businesses. You see the summer company program as well as the starter company program. If anything strikes you in the detailed budget, I think there's a line in there for conferences that's quite substantial, but that's actually the province's way of describing the learning and training efforts that the Business Enterprise Center puts forth for the entrepreneurs who are coming through their organization. And I'm happy to answer any questions on any of that.
Councillor Soever?
The SWIFT program, we're putting 216, this is the final municipal installment.
Yes.
I attended the SWIFT presentation here, and it appears we're still a few years away from actually getting things out to tender. So what is going to be happening going forward? Are they going to come back with a new ask, or?
I think that the most recent information that the warden and I have had, we're in the final negotiation stage with the province to be able to execute that agreement and move forward. Unless there's something that fundamentally changes with the provincial broadband strategy, and we haven't been provided with any information to that effect, then the plan as it stands is that the SWIFT project is ready to go with RFPs on a rolling basis, if you will, across southwestern Ontario, beginning later this year. So hopefully, we'll actually see shovels in the ground sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, looks like we're on to tourism.
Good afternoon, Warden Hicks and Council.
Afternoon.
I'd like to present our tourism budget for 2019, and we're requesting a very small increase of $2,000 from our 2018 expenditures of $590,225 to $592,260. So I should probably just sit down at this point. That's a very small increase, but I'd be doing our department a little disservice. So I'd like to tell you a little bit briefly about what we do in tourism and what makes up this budget. We're guided by a Destination Development Action Plan that was completed in 2016, and we also do meet quarterly with our Tourism Advisory Committee. So that committee provides strategic guidance to us. Under that plan, there are 4 pillars. Each one is clearly led by one of our staff members, so we have very clear accountability. Stakeholder engagement is all about us meeting our stakeholders in the tourism sector, businesses, industry associations, municipalities, our municipal colleagues. We have $10,000 in the budget to continue education sessions, networking, providing our industry website, and regular communication such as newsletters. Our biggest pillar we call destination development is really the marketing that we do, which is our biggest spend, but it also includes destination management, looking after Grey County as a tourism destination. Big project for us this year will be updating our website. That website receives well over 100,000 visits per year, so it's a huge outreach, but it needs to have more social media brought into it and also brought up more to date with today's standards. That's $20,000. Marketing Grey County, we've spent about $120,000 in direct marketing, so through social media, print, video, advertising, brochures, highway signs, and then about another $50,000 in graphic and content development that supports all that work. And then our last pillar, market research and tracking. We'd like to leverage, we usually spend about $10,000 a year in this pillar. That's really trying to track both the success of our plan and the success of our marketing, but more importantly, who's coming to Grey County, why are they coming, and share that intelligence with our colleagues and our businesses. So this year we're proposing a project to take our $10,000, leverage it with $20,000 out of reserve for a $120,000 data analyst and research project for the year. So again, that's just a $10,000 net hit to the levy. And then our capital budget this year includes spending the $20,000 on web development. And sort of as has been mentioned before, we also put $10,000 back into the reserve for future use for website. $7,500 towards the future updating of our Destination Development Action Plan. $10,000 for our website I mentioned. And $9,000 is a transfer for the future replacement of our tourism vehicle. And that $9,000 is actually offset by $6,000 in sponsorships. We have 4 sponsors in the vehicle, so they pay us to take their logo all around Grey County and around Southern Ontario. So that is our budget. I might just be a little proactive and say that in 2018, so for those sharp-eyed councillors that are looking at our actual expenditures in 2018, we were significantly under budget. That was primarily as a result of some staffing changes. We had 1 staff retire and 1 leave us for another position. So just that loss of staff time was also reflected in some of the projects that we couldn't complete. So I think our year-end position will be around $40,000 under budget. thought I'd point that out because I'm sure somebody probably saw, wow, your 2018, at least the figures in front of you are to the end of November. They're about 100,000 under budget or 90. The year-end actual will be closer to about 40. And some of that we're going to be asking you to move into 2019 projects then.
Good. Any
So-
questions, council?
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Suarez.
so,
Hand up there.
how many visitors do we get a year in Grey County roughly?
Great question. Our best guess is 2.7 million. That's what the province tells us through data they collect. But one of the big reasons for the data analyst project is really to try to dig in to verify that, to better understand who's coming, where they're coming from, what activities are they undertaking, are they a good match for us here, and how we can sort of best help our businesses take maximum advantage of them from an economic standpoint.
So your budget is about 20 cents a person, so I think that's pretty good value.
We believe they spend about $330 million, so that's, and those are just Ontario visitors. We don't even have to rely on internationals. Thank you. Point well made.
Other questions? Thank you, sir. All right. Social services.
Good afternoon, Mr. Warden, County Council.
Name.
I'm going to speak to social services, the Ontario Works and Childcare portion of the budget. You are looking at an increase of $49,000 to our 2019 budget, and this breaks down over the two programs. So for for a total of $3.5 million. And we have, for our social assistance budget, we require $95,000, almost $96,000, which is an increase of $8,300, and that's mainly because of some non-shareable costs back with the province. You heard earlier comments from Kevin about how the ministry does pay for quite a bit of our programming. We do have some, though, that aren't covered and that are 100% municipal. So some of these are non-shareable, and that would include dentures and non-shareable funerals, and I'll speak a little bit about that. Right now, we're basing our current caseload of 1335, so that's our estimate for 2019, and that's no increase for us. We're thinking we're pretty stable. We've been tracking that caseload, and that's not to say that in the future we won't see an increase. I just wanted to put it on your radar that we're hearing there will be some changes to eligibility for Ontario Disability Support Program, and a lot of our clients on Ontario Works do qualify currently for other types of resources, and one of them would be a disability benefit. That is currently under review, and we've been told through our ministry's support staff that there is going to be some changes to what that looks like for people to be eligible for disability. And that may mean our caseloads climb a little bit. So we'll keep you informed of that and any changes that come forward. But for 2019, we can expect that our caseload should be pretty stable. We have included a 1.5% rate increase, and that's a provincial rate increase, and that's for all social services benefits. Our non-shareable expenditures, as I mentioned, are some denture reimbursements and for non-social assistance recipients for funerals, so non-SARS funerals. We've increased the denture, and we know that we had about 22 to 23 non-social assistance funerals last year. And so we're estimating approximately that again. Our CHIPPY, which is our Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative, that's 100% provincially funded, and that supports people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. We have a number of programs that we support through that, such as emergency shelter, hostel funding, some case management, tenant and mental health education that we partner with some local providers with, a sustainable housing benefit where we offer last month's rent and whatnot to help people. And we're indicating that there's a funding increase of almost $72,000. That's over 2018, the funds that we did receive. And so the Ontario Works Administration budget, you'll see that we have an increase of $28,000 there. We're up to $1,330,000. And our budget contains some salary increases for union and non-union staff. The budget also contains money for a department review. It's been many years since my department has been under review, so we're going to undertake that in the coming year to determine what we can do more efficiently. And we are going to fund that, though, through the general reserve, our social services reserve. And we are, some of our capital funding, it includes replacement of our laptops and other computer hardware that we need to do our jobs. For our employment supports under our Ontario Works program plan, you'll see that the increase is about $13,000, which puts us at $570,000, and that's mainly salaries. You'll also see that we're continuing funding for our Getting Ahead programs, and if anyone's been to those, you'll know how vital they are and how important they are for success for our clients. And so I'll stop at this point for any questions on Ontario Works.
Councilor Milne?
Mr. Warden, good report, Barb, thank you very much. The Getting Ahead program, how many students has that program graduated? I think it's a fantastic program. I always supported it, but I'm curious to know how many we've put through over the years.
We have over 150 now, and every year we try to do 3 separate sessions in different communities, and the success is phenomenal. Thank you for bringing that forward. We have people going to college. We have most of our folks are getting jobs. There's just an extra support system built in with each other as peer supports, and there's something to be said for graduation and following through and the success that takes place. So thank you for bringing that up. Childcare. Licensed home childcare, I'll start with that. We have a budget that includes a departmental operating requirement of $228,000, which is a little bit less than last year. And that's because our private home providers are down in number. We're down to 35. And it's a bit of a complex mix as to why. We have some aging out. Some folks who were providing care for a long time have moved on. We have others who have it's a rigorous process. As more bureaucracy and oversight is applied because it's necessary for quality care, it's difficult for some of our or some of our folks who are there to be with the kids. So we are supporting them as they are required to meet the mandates, but it is a difficult challenge, and some people have decided to no longer partner with us for those purposes. So we're working on strategies. We'll be looking at this in the coming year with that departmental review as well, because our private home providers are a vital part in our community where we don't necessarily have other opportunities, and they also provide care overnight and for different kinds of care than some of our other service providers can provide. So just giving you a heads up on that. We have a purchase service budget line includes fee subsidy decrease of $30,000, and that's based on a decrease in the providers there. And our per diem rates are maintained from our 2018 rates. That's also something we'll be taking into consideration when we review the program. What are we paying? What does it look like across the province? For childcare administration, our funding formula that was announced in 2013 provided a reduction to us based on the number of kids in our community. So mitigation funding has been used by the ministry to assist us, and we've been using that in the years forward since 2013. The ministry requires any shortfall in ministry funding to be offset by that, and you'll see there is some mitigation funding being used here. And we have to use it until it's fully used up, and we hope there's another strategy behind that. 2019 Child Care Administration budget includes a net departmental operating requirement of $141,000, and that amount's not changed, but it is utilizing $294,000 of that mitigation funding that I talked about. That's going to include one staff. It's a contract staff at this point, but we are looking at requiring additional resources to help us in that program. And part of the scope of our review, as I mentioned, will be to take a look at what are we doing, and are we doing it in line with the provincial allocation. We also have $35,000 included for a special needs resource review. Again, this is a program that we've been operating for a number of years, that it's time for some oversight and to take a look at what's happening there. Repairs and maintenance. These funds are 100% provincially flowed to us, and they help our childcare providers to meet licensing needs, necessary repairs and whatnot. And that includes money for small waterworks. We do have some providers in rural areas that need to do well testing, and that's very important to us that we keep them compliant and help them to be compliant. Early child development planning. This budget includes a net department operating requirement of $29,000, which is just a little bit of a decrease, and the budget contains expenses to fund costs for meetings, policy implementation, and training in relation to early learning and child development. Along with work with our Indigenous partners, we work closely with Mawikwadong Friendship Center here in Grey County, but they serve both Bruce and Grey, so we do partner with Bruce County for a number of initiatives as well. Our early-ons, you guys will be familiar with this. The 2019 early-on budget includes a net department operating requirement of $158,000, so there is no increase over the 2018 requirement. We wish there were. Provincial funding for the program increased in 18, and this funding is used to offset salary and operational increases. The budget supports services and programs for children aged 6 and under and contains municipal funding due to insufficient provincial funding. So we do have multiple sites that we support, and the main one for us is in Hanover. It's our flagship site. Journey Together operating. The operating budget contains 100% provincial funding, and this funding, again, is to support increased access to culturally relevant programs for early learning in early years for Indigenous children and families. And this budget contains $87,000. Any questions at this point? No? I'll keep going. Purchase of service budget contains childcare fee subsidy for nonprofit and for-profit childcare operators and for our Ontario Works formal and informal childcare. So the 2019 purchase of service budget includes a departmental operating requirement of $402,000, which was a little bit less, a decrease of $5,287, and it's based on our 2018 year-end projections. So we don't have less kids. We're just allowed to flex a little bit, and we're trying to maximize our provincial funding where we can. We're moving some things around that when we're allowed to, and this is one of the budget lines that show that. Capacity building and play-based materials. This budget, again, is 100% provincially funded with no municipal contribution. The budget assists childcare operators to provide training for their own staff, which will result in increased capacity. So it's helping the staff within their centers. And we flow the dollars to the operators, and they pay for their own staff training. We sometimes organize and support, but they really do work well with their own teams. They know what they need. The play-based materials budget for 2019 remains as the 2018 budget to fund materials and equipment that the providers need, and that helps them with their learning. And this one will be recovered if it's unspent, and it cannot be reallocated. So again, working closely with those operators to see what it is they actually need and being compliant and supportive. The General Operating Grant, otherwise known as the GOG, famous for acronyms in this program. It's 100% provincially funded, and the budget contains funding provided to assist childcare operators with costs such as wages, occupancy costs, utilities. They're all operating expenses. Special needs resourcing, I spoke a little bit about that earlier. We have multiple providers here in Grey, and the 2019 specialized needs resourcing budget includes a net departmental operating requirement of $188,000 compared to $184,000, which is an increase of just under $4,000. This funding is used to support the inclusion of children with special needs in the licensed childcare settings at no additional cost to the parents. So working closely this coming year on a review to make sure we're using those dollars as we need to be and supporting families as best we can. Wage enhancement. This one is 100% provincially funded as well, and it's intended to increase childcare wages. We've talked to you before about the challenge with keeping staff in childcare centers because of the low wage compared to what boards of ed will pay. This is one of the strategies the province has provided us at a $2 an hour increase for all staff to equalize with the Board of Ed. We use that word, but it's not really equal. The Board of Ed certainly still pays more, but it's getting us closer to a similar wage. And we had planned for an increase in 2019, but we all know that minimum wage did not increase this year. So working closely again with the operators to make sure that we're supporting as best as possible. Expansion funding. This funding is, again, 100% provincial funding, and it's intended to create access to licensed childcare for ages 0 to 4. And for 2019, we received a total of, we'll be expecting, or we've budgeted, sorry, a total of $1,379,000 in provincial funding to be budgeted to use for this purpose. The budget, in addition to creating access to licensed childcare, is providing funding to support contract positions within our own department, the home childcare worker, financial assessment worker, and children's services program supervisor. Again, all of these administrative pieces are necessary to help flow these funds and support our continuum of childcare. Early learning and childcare funding, our ELCC. These funds are to support children 0 to 12. And for 2019, we are budgeting a total of $524,000. This budget, as the expansion budget I just spoke to, in addition to creating access to childcare, is providing funding to support the home childcare worker, the financial assessment worker, and the children's services program supervisor position. We don't know what to expect going forward. We are being told 2019 will look similar to 2018. But again, questions were asked this morning. What does it look like with some changes in the future? And we'll be paying close attention to that. We have I'll stop there for childcare. Any other questions? Okay. County social initiatives. These ones are 100% levy dollars, and we require over the years, we've determined what our additional needs are outside of what's funded by the province. They tend to present in different ways at different times. So we have an operating requirement of $305,000, a little bit up, about $7,000 from 2018. And the amount of reserve funding has been reduced in 2019 by $7,000 to reduce the reliance on that Best Start reserve funding, trying to mitigate as much as possible and elongate that reserve where we can. The county social initiatives budget contains items that are not funded by the province, and these initiatives are funded by our dollars, as I mentioned. They include support to our community drug and alcohol strategy, our NCB program with the Y, different partnerships, and as well funding to Safe and Sound, which you had a presentation in the fall. No new initiatives have been proposed, though, in the 2019 budget. Again, trying to hold that and determine what else our needs look like. Our van program. We have a van program, and it's 100% provincially funded. It doesn't require any municipal contribution. The community transportation program. This is the funding that was mentioned earlier, Ministry of Transportation funding that was announced, then on hold, and now announced again. We're fortunate to have $1.85 million over a 5-year period. And we needed to, when we applied for this grant, we needed to contribute from the county. So you'll see that our 2019 budget contains $370,000 in the provincial funding and $50,000 from our reserve to ensure that we can move this forward when the transfer payment agreement arrives and we can sign it. And again, we've received some notifications, but still waiting on other information to come forward. Questions on any of that?
Councillor Mackey?
Thanks, Barb. The transportation pilot, is it on hold then right now? Buses aren't running?
That's true. That bus stopped as of December 31st. We only had funding to take us through to the end of the year, and we notified the participants. We've been working closely with our provider, Home and Community Support. We do have some statistics to wrap up that will help us inform what that looked like, and we value that partnership, and we'll see where that goes with the new money when it's finally received.
Are you in a position to speculate when the service may resume and whether any tweaks are going to be?
I'm not, Kim.
No? Okay.
We received some information from the province that just bears some further discussion with them. It was a bit confusing, I'll just say it like that. So we had a conversation with them initially, and I'm expecting that we'll have another conversation with them next week as we try to sort that out.
Councillor Desai?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. One of the projects that people often talk about a lot when it comes to public transportation in a rural setting is about the Uber project that they've undertaken in Innisfil. My question through you to staff is if they're looking at that as an option in working with lower tier municipalities, so we can sort of have something like that across the county, just like Innisfil did in their rural setting.
You, Mr. Warden, I think what we need to establish clarity with the province on exactly how it is that they will allow us to use the funds that have been approved. We're asking for some additional flexibility on a number of aspects of this, and some extra time to, pursue the best possible options for the county. It's such a huge geography, and the population is quite scattered, as you know. So we're following that, and we'll see where it takes us.
Maybe if we take Southgate out.
Did you skip your breakfast this morning, or what happened? Like, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I don't need to know that.
All right. I'm going to move forward with the capital.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So for the administration, the Ontario Works Administration capital, you'll see an allocation for a replacement of our laptops this coming year. And for the childcare capital, you'll see a departmental capital requirement of $44,000, which is an increase of just $350. And that contains $25,000 that we require to do some landscaping. We had to remove trees and whatnot at the Early On Center, so there's some work that needs to happen there. And it also contains $19,000 being transferred to reserve for future capital projects. As well as money that we are looking to move from one reserve to another to ensure that we can use it for purposes that we need for the early on and for other requirements for childcare. And finally, we have been contributing and will continue to contribute $25,000 for accessibility related renovation costs. So in the future, to meet that 2025 Accessible Ontario and an elevator cost. We do have Journey Together capital in this budget. It's 100% provincially funded, and that's to support work that's happening with the Mawikwadong Resource Center, the Friendship Center, and that amount, the budget for 2019 contains $465,000. And finally, we are working with Dundalk, with Southgate, on a community capital build. And this budget contains $302,000 and 100% provincial funding for the Early On Center there. We have some of that money, and we will be working towards milestones to receive the rest. We also have an Early On allocation included for the Sydenham opportunity for an Early On. Further reports coming back to you, though, on this. There's been some work happening in the last 6 to 8 weeks, and we have not received this funding. So it's a different situation than the Southgate scenario. Any questions? Thank
Very
you.
much. Great. Housing, we will go.
Housing. So just starting off, the overview is on page 98. Looking at our housing department with a decrease this year in budget of $227,929. I don't think I've ever had to say that before, so that's kind of neat. The reason for that, there are a couple of reasons. Number one is we, in the fall, in September of 2018, we took on Golden Town. So we took on 2 seniors buildings and 63 family homes. And with that, this will increase our rents, and we also, there are some market units with that too. So there will be an increase in the revenue coming in through that. And the other reason for the decrease is our hydro. Hydro has changed the way it is doing its rates, and we have noted in the last few years a decrease in our hydro. So we are able to decrease that budget line by $91,500, which has been a great benefit for us. And we hope that continues. We know that the funding rate is due for a look at again the end of May. So we were a little probably, we afforded for that if there is a change in the budget, but hopefully that will remain the same. So when I look at our housing budget, I think of it as in 4 areas. We have our operating budget, which is for all of the housing that we provide. We have our capital budget for all the housing that we provide. And then we have our nonprofits. We have 9 nonprofits throughout Grey County. And according to the Housing Services Act, we are responsible for providing funding to those 9 nonprofits that provide rent geared to income housing and market housing. And then we also have our 100% funded provincial programs through our investment in affordable housing program and some other programs that the province is providing. So I'm just going to start off with our operating budget, and that can be found on page 159. So I'm not going to go through line by line, but there is a breakdown of building by building also in your packages if you're interested in looking at any of the buildings that are within your municipality. I'm just going to highlight a few aspects on the page 159, looking again at line 54035, that is our current tenant rent, and looking at how that there will be about a 15% increase, certainly going towards assisting with the additional buildings and the overall portfolio. When we look at lines like the I'm just trying to find some here. Line 63403, maintenance of buildings. There is an increase in that line, along with other lines that are similar, just simply because we do have additional 109 additional units. So when it comes to looking at some of those contracted services, snow removal, painting, landscaping, that would be the increases. As to why is because we do have an increase in the amount of buildings that we're servicing. Emergency life systems, just wanted to let council know that Grey County, we're required by law to provide, to do annual inspections for smoke detectors, CO detectors, and we do have heat detectors in all of our buildings. We do it twice a year. We just, with the vulnerable clientele that we have, and the fact that we do have aging buildings, and it also gives us another contact with some of our tenants. We do that twice a year. We have in the past had some fires ranging from, a pot on a stove to an entire wing of a building back in 2011. So we are very safety conscious, and we work very well with all of the local fire departments to make sure that we're maintaining safe environments for people to live. Any questions on any of the operating costs? I'm going to move on to the capital costs then, and the capital costs are on page 189, or sorry, maybe mine's 189, 211. So looking at the capital costs, when we look towards what we're going to spend in a certain year, we have building condition assessments for all of our buildings. We have we have technical supervisors that go around that look at what is predicted on our BCAs as to what might need to be replaced. And then, of course, we always work with our custodians who are in our buildings every day and do recognize things that might be maybe ahead of schedule or might last longer. Looking at the projects that we have project number 1 up until 26 are the projects that we have scheduled for 2019. And if you look at projects 27 to 40, those are general lines that we have. So for instance, we may have appliances that need to be replaced, or fire panels that need to be replaced, hot water tanks, that sort of things, that we have money available in capital for that to happen, and we don't have to run to county council all the time to have those individually done. We do work together, or we do look for efficiencies when we can. So for instance, you might note that we have a number of parking lots that are on there. So we'll look over a 2 or 3 period and note some of the parking lots that need to be done. And if we can stretch them out another year, so we've got a number of them to put together, it just does make for efficiencies when it comes to tendering and getting better prices. Same with...
Kevin
Sorry.
has something to add, I believe.
No, I wanted to comment on the summer case that was cut an extra about an old 5-year capital plan and used it, and it shows like there's no expenditures happening in 2020 or 2023. That won't be the case. So we'll need to update this sheet, and we apologize for that error. That was missed in our review. So.
Thank you, Kevin. So, So basically, we do look and see if there are tenders that we can put together. Roofs, any of the roofs that we're doing right now, we are switching to steel. We're not getting the longevity out of our remaining roofs. So when it looks at, it's supposed to be a shingle for 20 years and we're getting 12 to 15. So that certainly is going to help us in the long run. And also we do have one flat roof that we work well with Garland Canada in order to try and get a roof that has a long warranty for not only the materials but the labor. So on the back page too, we also have carry forward. So we have a few projects this year that are carrying forward. One of them is the roof that we're working with Garland. And if you'll note, projects 43, 44, 45, 46, these are through the SHAPE program. So this is a program that was through the cap and trade funds. It is social housing apartment investment program, and we are having our roof done. It had to be done for high rises, and we only have one high rise, and that is in Owen Sound. But it did qualify for half of the roof to be done. We had done half of the roof at a previous date. The windows that we have in there are your commercial grade single pane windows that are nearing the end of their life cycle. So it was an excellent opportunity for us to replace them. And we're also looking at an air makeup replacement. As part of the program, you do have to do an energy audit before and then after all of the capital projects have been completed. If you have any questions on capital, I'd be happy to answer.
Green light.
Good. Okay. So the next project, or the next funding envelope that I always think of, is our nonprofits. Nonprofit can be found on page 210. So this just gives you the breakdown in funding that we are providing to the 9 nonprofits throughout Grey County. You'll note the Golden Town Residential Community. That is the nonprofit that we've brought under the wing of Grey County Housing. So there is a decrease in that budget, and that budget would have rolled over into any expenses that are into our regular Grey County operating budget. We do have, because of that, there is a decrease. The funding that they receive are based on provincial indices. So each year the province releases, we have a benchmark, let's say for administration, utilities, insurance, and that is increased by an indice as set by the province. This year the indice for hydro was actually a negative, so there is not much of an increase for the nonprofits this year. The other programs that we provide are 100% provincial programs, such as our investment in affordable housing program. So this year in 2019, we have $431,000 being invested in that program. The majority of that is going towards the build in Durham. Along with that, we have some Ontario Renovates money, a small amount of Ontario Renovates money. We also have listed some of the social housing apartment improvement program underneath the provincial programs, and again, that was the one I just mentioned for capital. So that's it for the housing budget. Questions? We're good?
Councilor Mill?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Anne Marie, I noticed in the, let's see here, page 212, your 5-year summary of your 5-year capital. I note for one of the Meaford properties there, you are proposing $30,000 for lawn tractors. Shouldn't we be contracting some of that stuff out, or?
So we do.
Comment on that, please?
Sure, certainly. And some of our buildings we do contract out, and some we do ourselves. Cost-effective wise, if there's the ability and the time for our custodian to do that, it does actually make sense. And that is something that we are going to do. Majority of our other buildings, we do it ourselves. So there was no tractor at this building because they were contracting someone out, and for what they were paying, the tractor would pay for itself probably in about 3 years. So we figured that it was worth our time to try and do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Subject we don't want to hear anything about. I'm
I
teasing.
beg your pardon?
that does something to me. The good news is the budget has been reviewed by the Committee of Management. So there are some peers in this room that will probably know it as well as I do. And please look to them for feedback. What I'm bringing forward today is the long-term care budget. So it's important to note that the long-term care budget is just over $33 million. Of that amount, approximately $6 million is required from the tax levy to operate the 3 homes. Wages and benefits account for 80% of our budget, which that doesn't leave us a whole lot of room for movement if you're not going to impact staffing levels. Funding is a very complex piece of long-term care. We have 4 operating envelopes we work within, the other accommodation, and that's things such as housekeeping, laundry, administration, raw food. We receive a set amount from the ministry in which we must spend on raw food. Any unspent funds go back to the ministry. As with the nursing and personal care envelope, that's for direct nursing care and supplies, and program and support services. That's for activities, recreation, dietitian, physiotherapy, and those types of expenses. And those envelopes also have to be spent out, or else the funding goes back to the ministry. Funding increases are usually announced sometime in the 2nd or 3rd quarter of each year. The other piece that we get for funding is called the Case Mix Index, and that's resident acuity. We usually know what that funding is about the week before Christmas we hear into the first part of January. At this point, we still haven't heard what the CMI will be for this year for the homes. So it's kind of hold your breath and wait. There is a table on the top of the one page. I think we've fallen behind on these things. If somebody knows where we are. Okay, I think we're quite a piece behind in the slides. Okay. Okay, I'll talk. On page 100 of the package, this is not the package on the computer, this is the package, the hard package. It's listed what we've put in our budget as an assumption for increases in each of the envelopes. And we've based that on what we're hearing from the industry to expect based on what we've received over the past few years from the ministry. And in the other accommodation envelope, we've budgeted for a 1.6% increase. We received 6% last year for food, which is a really great increase. We are anticipating it'll be more like 2% this year, as well as 2% in our other envelopes. Like the other departments, we always look back at what we've spent in the past year. When we're setting these budgets, we usually start in about the end of July, early August to start our new budget. So the homes are very proficient in looking at what they've spent year to date, what expenses come out that last quarter, and a lot of our expenses are based on contracts we have, whether that be with our fire companies, our inspections of equipment, that type of thing. So a lot of the big expenses, we're pretty sure where they're going to hit when we're setting our budget. As identified earlier by Kevin, we are going into negotiations. We actually start next week with the Ontario Nurses Association, and that's the registered nurses, and we have one outstanding contract at Grey Gables with OPSU, and we are proceeding to arbitration on that one. We were impacted with an increase for health and safety premiums for this year. The county looks at what usage is of the premiums. We are self-funded, but if you're using more than what we've funded, we're trying to keep a balance. They charge the departments more. We're seeing a fairly substantial increase, and it's impacting our budget by about $207,000 this year. And it's very similar to what the provincial rate would be if we weren't a Schedule II employer. So we're still within that level there. Another impact, they spoke earlier this morning about IT and some of the costs related to keeping servers up to date, making sure things are secure. A portion of that budget goes back to long-term care, and we're seeing about a $46,000 increase in that area this year to cover that cost. As part of doing our budget, we looked at some things that could possibly be funded through one-time funding. We have to update our electronic health record platform this year, and it's a one-time cost. Once it's done, then we just run with it. That's at a cost of $40,000. We have to update our menu, transfer some data, and do some staff education. That's a one-time expense of about $8,000. And we also have our initial cost for accreditation. Our accreditation fee is $10,000. We would anticipate that would be due again in 3 years. The offset to that will be approximately $41,000 we'll receive next year in additional revenue because we are accredited. So that's the good news. So those 3 items at a total cost of $58,000 were identified as eligible for one-time funding through the reserves of the homes. Also in the budget this year is 25% of the cost for the Sienna management contract. The other 75% of the cost is a transfer from reserves to offset that amount, and we've been able to work that into the budget. When it gets down to the homes, it was a really tough job this year to do the budgets, and I commend the finance staff and the administrators. They were working on a combined platform of what we've done always with the county and what the Sienna templates are like and that type of thing, and trying to get everything to align. And it did take them a considerable amount of time, but they've come out and been able to do a really good job of that. There's really no asks in this budget. We've tightened things up really tight. We are looking for 468 hours for Greg Abels to assist in scheduling. Everything else is based on what we've had in the past. There are a few risks with our budget in the sense that we don't know what our case mix index will be. What does that look like? And we've seen fluctuations of close to $200,000 a year, up or down, for funding in that area. So that is a risk. There's really nothing we can do about it other than wait and see and come forward with a plan when we know what that amount is. Other risks are associated with us being able to get some of the programs in place that Sienna have recommended to us around attendance management and managing workplace modified duties and that type of thing. So there are some challenges for us that way as we move ahead, but I think everybody's going in with the right attitude. The other challenge is around staffing. The amount of overtime we pay out, the amount of agency staff we use. There's no way to predict what that will be. We know what our standard staffing pattern is, and that's what we budget to. If we look at capital, we have Greg Abels requiring about $281,000 for capital this year. $73,000 of that is for the self-finance debenture. There's some computer upgrades, dietary equipment upgrades. There's always things like that in the homes, and you'll see that across the 3 homes. Very similar capital costs when it comes to equipment and supplies that way. We also have some copper piping that needs replaced and that type of thing in that home. At Lee Manor, we're looking for $219,000 for capital projects. The big change for them, and I'm just looking down the list here, where is it? Is a courtyard development of $135,000 that they have in their budget. And when the home had some major renovations completed a few years ago, there was no funding at that time to complete some of the outside areas. And a few years ago, they improved some drainage, and they've created a nice, safe, secure garden. And there is one other area at the home that could benefit from this same type of enhancement. And it sounds like a lot for garden development, but when you look that the home's built below a hill, and there's lots of springs in these hills, so you have to divert the water, you have to make it safe and secure, and provide some shaded areas, raised flower beds, and that type of thing. So that would be one project at Lee Manor that is a little different than what's happening somewhere else. And then at Rockwood Terrace, that home's a little more difficult to predict, but hopefully it's going to get easier. We have to have a safe, comfortable environment, and the home really works hard to make sure that they're balancing this as we move ahead. You'll see that they've got in for some different replacements, and some of that money they hold on to in case it doesn't need done, but we have to have it there in case it does. So things such as windows, doors, they get replaced through the year as they need it, versus if you knew the building was going to be a long-term building, you'd say, these need done, let's get it done. Whereas we're trying to maintain the life of this building, make it safe, make it environmentally friendly and pleasant for the residents while balancing off what that responsibility is financially. So we have not developed a 10-year budget or capital budget for that home because we know we've only got 6.5 years left there, and that's what we're working towards. So just to wrap up, the long-term care budget is a 0% increase. We're going to work hard to attain that this year. There's lots of projects underway. The big thing they're working on right now is accreditation. It's in full swing in order to meet our timelines for the fall. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Councillor Mackey?
Thanks, Warden. Can you just highlight for council, I mean, Sienna, I'll be the first to admit I was skeptical about what Sienna would be able to do for us, but obviously they've been able to come in and find a lot of efficiencies. Can you just highlight for council some of the primary areas, Lynn, that efficiencies were found? Because, you know, we had, what, 1.6% staff increase and 400 and some staff. You know, that's a significant amount of money. Sienna contract, we've got that in the budget now, so that was a significant amount of money. So they found efficiencies. Can you just let us know where most of those were?
Okay, I don't know whether I'll get most of them, but I can definitely give you some. A lot of it is around practices and purchasing. How do we achieve certain things? One that I was actually looking at early in council today is their orientation and onboarding practices for staff. It's a full suite of services that we can pick up and do that we're actually able to back off some staffing, target other areas, and get those things done. We had a really good look at our revenue, what's coming in, make sure that's all captured, and capturing some rebates that we'll receive from some suppliers in order to offset other things, which is really a benefit for the homes. The other piece will be around looking at some of our costs related to staff replacement, whether that be overtime and agency use. We've cut that back considerably. You're welcome.
Kevin? Sorry, Kevin.
Sorry, Kevin. No, I just wanted to actually compliment Lynn in that, because that, you're right, there's over $300,000 there for the management services, and that budget is still flatlined, so there's a lot. But, you know, I was skeptical too, I guess, but I really want to know, and I noticed this at the committee of management on Tuesday. It's that dealing with compliance and how much help that they're giving those administrators, that in itself, I think, has been a really big help. And I saw that, you know, you've seen that in the last couple of months at those meetings, how much Sienna is helping them with policies and procedures. So, you know, the financial things is great, but I think, you know, helping the staff with those compliances, policies and procedures and everything, with Sienna's mass, that they're doing that, and the structure they have is a big help. So, you know, at first I thought it was all thinking about financial and how much this is gonna help, but I think if you talk to the administrators and Lynn and stuff, it's that compliance issue that they really were struggling with us just having, you know, 3 homes trying to do it on the side where they've got such an organization to help with that. So I want to comment on that. And then the redevelopment budget, we continue to put away Lee Manors, the debentures that fell off, that 1.3 million is still going into reserve. So when we can keep saving monies for whenever redevelopment happens, that we have that capital funding there to move forward, and like decisions today about making that application, then we have funding there to purchase land or whatever we need to do, okay?
Now, Kevin.
Jets flying over at the football game. Great time.
Afternoon, Warden and Council.
Afternoon.
Just want to go over the paramedic services budget. In 2019, the paramedic services budget includes a net departmental requirement of $6,650,919, which is an increase of $247,913. In 2019, the operating budget reflects a $232,510 increase to operating and a $15,403 increase to capital. Each year, as far as the grant goes, the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care provides a 50-50 conditional grant based upon the previous year's municipal approved budget. And they also, the proposed budget is based on an assumed grant for inflation. This year, we're assuming is 1.5%, or a total of $137,000, $827. This funding from the ministry does not include any of the funding that we get from the Southwest LHIN for the community paramedic program. That's separate from this. So excluding money for community paramedicine and the wages, we pay transportation to service our vehicles. Paramedic services salaries and benefits have increased $237,700. Our benefits and our salaries make up about 80% of our budget. Where this is impacted this year, the first one is the wage increase for unionized employees. We go to arbitration in March, but based upon where we think that it'll come in at, that's what we budgeted. There is a bit of a risk there, but we do anticipate that we are, we know where we are within the province, and we make those assumptions based upon that. We also, there's an addition of the equipment supply technician in 2018. It was in the budget for 3 days a week. This year, we prepared the budget for 5 days a week. It was 24 hours. We've added 11 hours this week for a 35-hour work week for a total of $61,100. This person's going to look after all aspects of supply and equipment for the station, central stores, our bases, and all our vehicles, equipment failure reports, stuff like that. And in turn, what we want to do is be able to have the supervisor out on the road more, working with the crews, responding to the calls, and also doing the evaluation and providing coaching of the care live as the calls happen, which we feel is the best time to do that, would they be out there with them, and then providing that feedback to them. We have an electronic process, so we go back and we can fill out the evaluation, and then we feed it back to the paramedic. And whether we're doing a station check or a call evaluation, they're able to get that back to them right away. The equipment supply technician will also, this year, we're going to have them or her go out and look at our public access defibrillators. We have 150 in the county, and that's one area that we do lack, is getting out there and actually seeing these things on a site visit. It is quite a thing to keep track of all the supplies and equipment in them. One program that's not in the this budget document, but I just wanted to highlight, is a first response patient navigator. With a recent change to our deployment plan, we've taken a vehicle that was on in Durham from Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, and we put a single person response unit on 7 days a week. And that person will work from 9 to 9, which is our peak periods of time. Really what we're trying to do is spread out our resources and decrease our emergency response times. But also with the movement and changes as far as trying to work with people that are calling us frequently. We know in 2018, 150 people were responsible for 1,100 calls. So what we want to do is connect these people to different resources like LHIN Home Care, 211 for socioeconomic support, and mental health and also addiction services. We want to reach out to them. In Simcoe County, even just connecting people with 211, they've seen a 50% reduction in some of these calls. So we're trying to do some of that work. Community paramedic program, the 2018 budget was prepared not knowing if we would have funding beyond March 31st, 2018. But now, since that time, we have been approved for base funding. The base funding allows us to run the program 5 days a week. We run it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it includes home visits where we treat people in their home with an expanded scope of care. Again, trying to get to these people and treat them before their conditions become an emergency. We do remote patient monitoring. We do community clinics in Owen Sound and Thornbury. And also we do a referral program where we do even just where we screen people over 65. We do about 400 referrals to the LHIN each year. For PTSD and mental wellness, the Supporting Ontario's First Responders Act 2016, Bill 163, is a comprehensive strategy to deal with first responder PTSD, and our paramedics are a part of this. And one of the things that, as far as the presumptive legislation, not only just to care for people, is to have programs in place to reduce PTSD. Our goal here is not only to take care of people that have developed it, but really what we're trying to do is prevent it from even happening. So what we've concentrated on is having a peer support program where we have early notification of a team that will intervene with people that have stressful calls, and they'll provide early care. And then we have a consulting psychologist, Dr. Lori Gray, that oversees and does our quality assurance and our education and our training. But she also provides early interventional care for our paramedics so that we can actually intervene before they develop PTSD, so that they hopefully will not go down that road. Vehicle operations, the budget's increased by $44,200. Includes $43,000 for fuel, and we did notice in the 18 budget that we are short in the fuel area. And I would think it's partially due to our increase in call volumes. Over the last 3 years, I have a report coming the next council. We've had almost a 25% increase in calls, and last year alone was 7.35%, or roughly 1,348 calls. So we're trying to pick up that fuel, because obviously every call will be burning fuel. The operating budget includes various supplies and services that are funded from the Paramedic Services One-Time Reserve. It shows $69,000 funded from Paramedic Reserve for equipment, computers, linen, and supplies and training. There's also funding in there, $5,900 for furniture and equipment at the Chatsworth base, which is now open. We've increased our legal fees funding, and that is from one-time funding from reserve. But we will only use that if we require that for arbitration. In the county right now, at the Owen Sound base, we're going to do a trial with a generator that we've seen that in Dufferin that they used during an ice storm. It was fairly economical. They're able to put a panel in place and have a generator fairly quickly. So we're going to trial that at Owen Sound and see how it works. And if it is successful, we'd like to do the rest of our bases, because we still require a generator at Markdale, Durham, and Hanover. Some of our bases have them, but others don't. But our newer bases like Craig Leith and Chatsworth both have generator coverage. The 2019 budget includes a transfer reserve of $27,200. $12,000 of that is we do a 5-year replacement of jackets, so it's more like an operational reserve that we're funding, so we don't have to have that hit all in 1 year. And then also we have helmets and bags that we replace the helmets every 15 years, and I believe that's due in 2021. The 2019 capital budget has a levy impact totaling $93,996, and it's to cover the Chatsworth Station debenture and also future capital replacements and repairs at the Craig Leith and Owen Sound base. The debenture at the Craig Leith Station was paid off in 2016, and we're using those funds now to fund the Chatsworth base. And then also purchases this year. We're purchasing 3 ambulances. 1 ambulance will be purchased through the funds from insurance after an accident we had late last year. It was due to be replaced this year, so we'll use the funds from that. Typically, our vehicles, when we replace them, they're on a 6-year replacement. We have 15 of them in the fleet, and they usually have over 275,000 kilometers on when we get rid of them. We have funding for 2 emergency response units. 1 unit was actually carried over. We brought into the budget this year because we ordered the vehicle in September, and it's not due to arrive till March. It's 7 months to get that one. And just a conversion, just a late getting the community paramedic vehicle. It's getting its conversion done now, so we'll pay for that out of this year's budget. That money's just moved forward. And then 20 mobile Wi-Fi units, and then 2 stretchers, which one will be from the proceeds of insurance from that accident. Any questions?
Councilor Mill?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Kevin. Good report. The community paramedicine program, the people that were going out to help, do they typically have a family doctor?
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
So, if I might, when we do help them, does the community or the GP or the doctor, family doctor, does he or she get docked outside usage? You know, like if you go to another doctor or another emergency department or whatever, your family doctor gets charged outside use. They'll lose whatever number of dollars. So if we, the paramedics, see one of those patients, does the doc get charged?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
But if anything, we're very, I think, very fortunate to have the relationship we have with the Owen Family Health Organization, which is the docs, and also the family health team, that all the work they do for us, they don't charge any, even though we give them a benefit too by taking care of their patients, but all the oversight and QA that they do of the care, and we can patch to them every day we're on from 7 to 7. There's an on-call physician that we can call. They don't ask for any funding for that. It's all part of their regular salary for their care. So very fortunate to have their cooperation.
Thank you. Hoy.
Okay, this is the last one, right?
No
Page-
pressure.
Page 278. I'm just going to go through these sheets here. So just to let you know, this is our summary sheet. I guess it's 278 or possibly 255, depending on your package, I guess. We basically have our budget divided into 7 kind of mini budgets. The overall increase is just over 1.1 million. The majority of that is, as Kevin explained earlier, is maintaining the 1% levy increase to the capital and construction budget. So I'm just going to start kind of going through these sheets and just kind of explaining some of the highlights. So our first budget is with ordinary maintenance. And one thing to understand, we do activity-based budgeting here. So you'll see the list of, beaver removal and dead animal pickup and shoulder graveling. And so we divide everything down into activities. Now, of course, everybody understands that it's all based on, what's that?
We had some lunch.
Yeah. It's all based on the weather. So clearly, we're not going to not pick up a dead animal because we're over budget, right? So this is our kind of best estimate based on things in the past. Sometimes there's information that we know, why we didn't reach a certain budget the year before, or why we were over. And so we'll sit down with the area maintenance manager and the area foreman and kind of go over and say, oh, we'd like this budget to be a little more this year. We kind of adapt this during the year based on activities that need to be completed. And one thing, just before I get too far, I wanted to thank Joanna from Finance and Matt Mark and Graham Wilson for all the work they've done this budget. It's a big task to undertake all this stuff. So anyway, it's funny because we've talked about getting out of activity-based budgeting, and then you go to a conference or something, and there'll be a speaker saying everybody should do activity-based budgeting. So, because we kind of think, well, our guys are working, we're going to pay them what they're doing. We can figure, they're all working. But people feel like it's a way to see what you're up to. It's an easy way for our guys to calculate manpower. We divide our equipment between the 4 patrols, and we have a work schedule where everybody kind of goes over and figures out what they're all doing. They'll have the grade all will be in one patrol for a few weeks, then it'll go to another one. So the activity budget does kind of guide us that way. Some of the highlights. One thing you'll notice, pothole patching, for example, was quite high last year. It's not off to a great start this year yet. We seem to be doing a lot of pothole patching the last few weeks. So we've upped that amount a little bit. And that's one thing we'll do too. So if, one year you had 100 and that year your actual is only 50, we don't necessarily want to lower it to 50 right away because there might be other factors that we can't anticipate on why that is that way. Crack filling, we're showing an increase. We just noticed from our guys in the field that we have a lot of pavements that are 3 to 5 years old that are just showing that first cracking that usually happens in that window. So we'd like to kind of get them sealed up to keep the water out, which is our biggest enemy. We've noticed that shoulder washout repairs and pavement edge repair have gone down because of all the paved shoulders, we think, and it was a fairly dry summer too, which was also a reason mowing was a little lower. Mowing is the same. We don't, they say, do you want 1 cut or 2 cuts? It really depends on where we are. Certain areas we do 2 cuts. We get a lot of calls. There's a lot of pedestrians. There could possibly be a safety hazard with having long grass on the edge of the right-of-way. Other areas, one cut would suffice. So that's kind of something we judge in the field based on the summer. You'll see the brushing number on page 279 here. So we're still carrying that 75,000 additional brushing for the Emerald Ash Borer. It hasn't really taken effect here yet. It's starting in the south end, but it hasn't really shown a big increase in activities. One other thing to notice on this page, the culvert's under 3 meters. Currently, it looks like, we were 140,000 over budget last year, but actually we have some collection to do from Bruce County. We did 2 culverts with Bruce County, and one with Simcoe. So we'll be collecting some fees on those. Now, the 3 cable guide rail replacement, we had spent nothing last year. That was a conscious decision. We knew our construction program last year, for those of you that remember all the reports I was taking, that everything was over budget. Everything was over budget. So we purposely stopped maybe doing some of those guide rail replacements. We obviously repaired and kept it in a safe condition, but we knew we were kind of going to have to save some money somewhere because capital was so overpriced last year. On to the next page, a couple things here. Pavement marking continues to go up. We'll have a new tender this year. We do have a lot of paved shoulders and a lot of white lines, so we are painting more lines. Our feedback from the public is everybody likes the white lines, especially with your population aging. It's nice at night or in the rain. Everyone seems to benefit from that white line. So, sign manufacture continues to be quite high. There's a lot of signs, and they have to be replaced regularly. The standard is fairly strict. So, we have some other things in here. Some of our electrical was over last year. That being said, we've replaced a lot of solar. We did some school zones last year, so we kind of had some high-priced items there. Now, the winter maintenance budget, we've basically added 2%. It again is one of those things. We have our $500,000 winter maintenance reserve that we can dip into if we need it. So, but it's one of those things where you're kind of at the mercy of Mother Nature, obviously. So, that is just a 2% increase over last year. So on to page 258. So this is our capital construction and resurfacing, and there's a map on page, 289, I guess. It's a corresponding map. So the first, at the top of the page, there's minor capital. Basically, the minor capital is for doing things like kind of limited patching. You might have 100 meters where you go out and repair so many potholes, it's just easier to overlay it. There's microsurfacing. We might do a little microsurfacing job that's in there. Any municipal drains. The Katy municipal drain is kind of slated for next year. The Wright drain in West Gray. So that's just, that minor capital is kind of jobs that come up that need to be done. There might be a dig out, maybe a rock sometimes that gets pushed through frost up towards the surface. We'll go in and dig it out. Last year, we were under budget on that, and that again was kind of a conscious decision because we knew capital was going to be over. So we did what we had to do, did a few patches. We limited some of our guide rail replacements and some of the additional patching to just try to stay within budget. The next section is the major bridge and culvert repairs. Really committed with our bridge crew. For those of you that don't know, we have 8 folks on the bridge crew, 1 non-union, our bridge foreman, and 7 union staff. So they do a lot of work to really maintain our structures, and saves us a lot not having to tender, because you never know what you're going to get till you kind of peel the bridge deck back, and then you realize you thought you'd have to replace 30%, and it's actually 50%. So it's really nice to have those guys on staff. They do the work that needs to be done, so that nobody else particularly wants to do, because it's really hot, and you're always out in the open, and you're holding a jackhammer and that type of thing. So we're very appreciative of them, and we've really committed to keep those bridge repairs going. And we've done some work for the member municipalities too. We did a retaining wall for Owen Sound last year, and those kind of projects can continue. Another in there is structured detailed investigations, which we didn't really do any additional last year. We had 50,000 in there. We did some 2 years ago. That is really just to learn a little bit more about the bridges, just to basically keep us from having to replace them or do a lot of maintenance on them. So 2 years ago, we had done a load test that basically told us it was a bridge in our 5-year capital that we didn't have to do anymore. So we're going to have to go back in 5 years and do that, but if we can put off that capital investment, it's to our benefit. And the next section is the construction and resurfacing. I will talk about that in a minute on the map on the next page. One other item just to mention, the land acquisition, we had 100,000. We've only spent about 37. We want 100 in there. Again, this year we're recommending 100. it seems like we're not spending it, but a lot of that land acquisition is with our internal forces, getting the legal survey done, starting negotiations. So we've got kind of a whole bunch in the queue that we're trying to buy all this widening and to expand our right-of-ways, especially with the amount of utilities now. You know, there's different fiber operators, there's utility companies. The 66-foot right-of-way isn't very roomy by the time you get gas in there and everybody else. So we really are committed to we know 100,000 isn't near enough, but
Councilor Milne?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. What do we typically pay per acre for widening on our roads? Is there a ballpark number we try to get to or stay under?
we do have a set fee. I think Blue Mountains has a higher rate, but 5,800, I'm not sure the figure. It's something nobody's ever happy with. They always think they should get a lot more, so.
Well, I'd just soon they'd be unhappy as us, so.
We end up negotiating quite frequently, and then we have the next step that we can get to an assessment.
Yeah.
It depends. You know, the land that we're typically buying isn't overly useful to most people. It's a ditch, or it's, you know, so it's not like we're buying prime land. Their initial instinct is, I paid 500,000 for my house and 100 acres, so I should get, you know, this much, but they don't count the house, and so, yeah, our figure is probably a little low as per our policy, but I don't think you'll ever get one that everybody agrees on, so.
Most of the swamp we buy in Grey Highlands would be like almost nothing.
Councilor McQueen?
And I don't know, Councilor Millen, if you were on the time when I was on, but back around early 2010, 11, on the Transportation Committee, I know we reviewed that. So it's probably due to review that. I think it works out per square foot, is it not? It gets down to per square foot or per square meter, I think.
It's an acre, I think, but it's, yeah.
But if you're doing a
Yeah, but and there's $1,000 minimum.
Yeah, it gets down to a certain calculation, so I would suggest, Mr. Warden, through Madam CEO, that we do review that, because 8, 9 years later, agricultural land has changed, a lot of things have changed in value, so I think it'd be fair, should have that review. You and I might have been on the same group at that time.
One other thing on that page, just traffic signal upgrades. So we had 75,000 in the budget. Basically, our plan, our plan is, the flashing advanced greens are supposed to go to an arrow. That being said, a lot of our controllers wouldn't support the arrow because of the wiring. So we've got 125,000 in the budget now to replace 3 controllers so they can support more functions. On to the capital page. I'll just try to quickly go through the jobs here. First one is the Grey Road 4 intersection at 18th in Hanover, where the new school is. So we're putting a set of signals in there. There's some land acquisition to do yet that we haven't finalized. The next one is a carryover job from this year, where the scope increased pretty significantly after the job started with storm sewer. That's a West Grey job that we will be carrying out and continuing this year with the same contractor. The third job is the intersection down here at the bottom of the hill. For anyone, most of you probably aren't coming southbound to turn left, but getting caught waiting for that southbound left is pretty frustrating since there's no left turn lane. So, you're sitting there waiting to turn left and there's a line of cars over the top of the hill. So we're looking to have opposing lefts there just to increase safety of the intersection. Grey Road 9 reconstruction in Dundalk. We're partnering with Dundalk on that. It's being designed right now. They're undertaking the design through a consultant, and they're the project lead. So that's a big job that is probably long overdue. Grey Road 13 from Highway 4, or from Grey Road 4 to Artemisia, pulverize and pave. Another job that we moved up that is showing signs of premature deterioration, and the maintenance is kind of starting to increase. So we're going to fix that.
Councilor McQueen?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just briefly on that, I know that we had done a flood study in Eugenia, but we're not at that point of doing. I think you've had conversations with our transportation manager with regards to the ability to bore under the road without having to destroy the road. The reason I'm saying is we're looking at doing some flood management issues in Eugenia, but we're not at that point of doing that culvert or doing that bridge or whatever. So there's a new technology that you can bore and shove a culvert through the bottom of the road without having to rip it up. So I thought that's sort of new technology out there that costs a little bit, but then overall you don't have that bumper, that disruption to your good road.
Yeah, and we're trying to work with all the member municipalities on anything that they pinpoint for us on the projects. Dundalk, for example, there's gonna be maybe some fiber installation, going on with that job. Structure in Holstein, oh, wait, I skipped over Grey Road 40, so I didn't actually do that on purpose. Grey Road 40 actually is already closed. The tender closed last Thursday. Well under budget, about 680,000. We'll have a report coming soon. Just so you know that it is our first job out. It went out early. It's a 15-kilometer job, the biggest job from length we've ever done. We're not promising that 680,000 anywhere else yet. So we're gonna see how the other tenders close. It makes us feel much better than being 680,000 under budget, but we dipped a lot into reserves last year to carry us through. So that, we're kind of in a good shape right now, and we're hoping maybe it's a trend. We couldn't quite figure out why asphalt was so expensive when oil is $45, but we're hoping maybe this will be a pattern we see this summer, and maybe we'll be in good shape when the summer's over. So that's good news coming shortly. Structure in Holstein, it's going to be going out fairly soon after this budget gets passed. And very complicated structure. The town is right there. There's buildings sort of attached. It's long overdue as well. It'll be nice to get it replaced. A little inconvenient, obviously, for the residents of Holstein, but I think ultimately they'll be happy with the project. Grey Road 119 stormwater diversion. That is basically to fix a water problem that has been ongoing in Price's subdivision, where water flows down 119 and off Blue Mountain and kind of gathers around down there, and there's no real provision for it. So basically, we worked with the town, and they've undertaken a study, and we're going to try to redirect some water away from that area. At the bottom there's two transfers, one for Grey Road 15 project in Owen Sound for next year, 2020, and then a capital infrastructure reserve, where we're just keeping that 1%. We've got lots of big projects coming up, specifically really large ones in Blue Mountains, and we're starting to just put some money away just because we dipped so deeply in the reserves last year. Okay, the supervision and overhead budget. So a lot of this budget is things that we don't necessarily control, like OMERS or CPP or some of that stuff, but I'll just give some highlights here. Engineering supervision, we are proposing a new position, basically a project design engineer. And then we'll bring forward a report on that, but what seems to happen is we've been trying for a few years to get farther ahead in our designs, just to kind of get a better 5-year plan or 10-year plan number and a better budget number. And we have gotten ahead, but probably not as far ahead as we'd like. So with the new emphasis on asset management and just the fact that it's hard for our engineering guys when what you're working on, your two choices are something 5 years away or something really serious going down with a contractor out at that day. Sometimes the long-term planning seems to take a back seat. So that position would be a focus for asset management, ongoing asset management, and long-term design. That's what we're hoping. That we're just kind of separating our department a little bit just to make it more efficient. As far as some other numbers, on-call has increased through our negotiations. There's going to be a little more compensation for our guys that are on call. In the winter, we have someone on call. Actually, in the summer as well, but they're on call 24/7. So, and they get paid for being on call, but then they get paid if they have to do something. So, we've kind of been dealing with the union on that. Union business, we've kept our number way over budget last year. Negotiations weren't done quickly, so we all spent a little more time sitting around the table than probably we all would have liked, but we came to an agreement, so we're all happy about that. Training budget, you'll see if you look through the training numbers, those numbers are quite high last year. The last 2 years, we really wanted to get our guys trained. All our staff wanted to get trained. We didn't really want to limit their opportunities. That being said, most of them have gone through the OJRA, the Mahoney Road School now. There's a maintenance and a construction, and we just feel like, training those guys, it's just going to increase their knowledge, it's going to increase their connections, it's going to make them better employees. So we probably went a little farther over budget than we needed to last year, but it should be dropping now because everybody is sort of trained up. And we got a simulator, for those of you that saw it, for winter training, which we'd never done before. So Kim got a chance to do it. I did too. I didn't kill anybody, but I did cover a cop car by not lifting my wing up. Anyway, the guys in the plow are safe from me taking their job, anyway.
Is that while you're on your phone?
On to our facilities and depots. So these numbers are all, this is everything that goes into operating a patrol building. So anywhere from hydro, some capital stuff, guys sweeping the floor, cutting some grass, everything goes with those depots. We have 4 big depots and then a couple smaller yards. So those are kind of what those numbers are. That being said, Dundalk, we're trying to not put too much in because we have an upcoming replacement, hopefully, of Dundalk and Flesherton and building a new depot. And you'll see that at the bottom, we've got $2 million going into the Patrol D housing reserve, basically coming from our equipment reserve. So self-funding some reserve for the new depot, which should be in Flesherton area. So we're currently working with other people going through the process of finding a new site for that. On page 285, there's the list of the things we are doing in patrols, the larger work. Some work on the scales in Chatsworth, the Patrol B dome roof, removing fuel tanks in Dundalk, which we have to do. And so a lot of that stuff is from our building condition assessments, which are very good. But again, those, we go through with our area foreman and say, does it need to be done? If we don't need to do it, well, we won't. But these are all kind of high-value projects. On to page 286. This is the equipment budget. So the way that works is we put money in our equipment reserve, and then every year we take out what we need to buy our equipment. So we have 40 pieces of equipment, over $11 million in value. We're putting $960,000 in this year, and we were spending $1.9 million. So Joanna works through all our reserve tables. So we know the reserve kind of goes up and down, but we know we're putting enough away to buy all our equipment. And then we'll charge ourselves, she'll look at our charge out rates, we'll charge ourselves out an adequate amount to, if you have a 12-year life on a piece of equipment, you have to charge X every year to pay for its replacement. Down at the bottom of the page there is all the piece of equipment we're buying. So those 2 roll-off trucks we are buying are reducing our fleet by 2 because they do so many items. I'd show the video again if we had more time. Anyway, on to kind of our second last budget here is our asset management budget. So the big item there is there's $175,000 for storm sewer inspection program. So that is mandated by the province. We have 50 kilometers of storm sewer in various states of knowledge and in various states of condition. So we're just getting a good baseline, getting it all inspected and cataloged, know exactly what kind of condition it's in. Ultimately, it should probably save us money in that we know exactly what scope of work is coming and we can plan our replacements better. The other thing on that page is down at the bottom of the page, there's 40,000.
Just to be clear about the storms, I can't remember if we talked about it with this council, but it's being cameraed.
Yeah, flushed and cameraed and
We're actually gonna have.
flushed and cameraed and cataloged, and it'll get a report. A report will come in telling you what your condition is, and at the bottom of the page there, we have 40,000 we have those outstanding items from the master plan. There was the road exchanges and the connecting links. We just find it's a project that we've been slowly progressing on, but it's kind of sitting on the corner of your desk, and there's certain amounts of work that are just really labor intensive, but not overly complicated. So we put that in there to get some consultant help. We've talked to some that have done similar studies that we were very happy with. And so we just put that in there that if we need them to do some kind of labor-intensive work that is pretty straightforward, we're not letting them lead the project, we're not redoing the transportation master plan. It's just helping us get that connecting link and road exchanges finished. And the last is the quarry. The quarry figures remain basically unchanged. We have our license. In the next month or so, we'll be bringing forward a report. The last committee we had, asking us to investigate a royalty-based contractor-operated quarry. So we've met with the contractor. We're writing a report on just exactly where that's going as far as an RFP going out for royalty-based operation in the quarry. So we didn't really have enough data to change the numbers, so right now we just kind of left the quarry budget the way it was. So, and then the last page is just the map. But
Questions? Councillor Mackey?
Thank you, Warden. Pat, thanks for the report. Thank you very much for County Road 40 and the work that's going to be done on that this summer. It certainly is long overdue. Just a question, you mentioned earlier around crack sealing. Any idea what a good crack sealing program, how long that extends the life of our highways?
Well, you know, it might be 3 years, might be 2, might be 4. You know, it's kind of one of those things.
You don't have
where-
any idea?
I don't have a, didn't I just say? No. A 2 to 4, maybe? I don't know. Yeah.
So it's well worth
There's a
doing.
nodding back there.
It's well worth doing.
Yeah, it is. You're just taking you're just getting the water out of there, right? Like, once the crack starts, it's, you know, it's just gonna get worse. So that's kind of, yeah, it's pretty reasonable, really. It's not super expensive for how widespread they can go.
Thank
So
you.
We found good value in it.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Swaber.
On quarry, I see you're putting $1,000 into the quarry rehabilitation reserve. Is that reserve adequate, or have we assessed what the needs may be if we close it down and have to rehabilitate?
That is something we will mention in the upcoming report. So there's, yeah, that's something we've got to work out with. We would have to work that out with the contractor on what the reserve's at and if it's enough. So we got to do some more information in that, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Last thing I just want to mention is reserves. We've put our reserve schedule in here, showing the comings and goings. The reserves are, you've heard a lot of budgets today saying use of reserves, and I have to say, the last few years when we were putting money away, I was always questioning, why am I putting money away from reserves? Well, those projects are now coming forward that we need, you know, roofs replaced, and for example, we're using, you know, $730,000 for the Sydenham Skills Training Center. We're using for our IT infrastructure about $480,000. For Sienna, we're using $900,000 to cover that. For our trails, we're using $144,000. The gallery update at Grey Roots was $200,000, and the church relocation project is $200,000. So we have, and then we have childcare mitigation that's coming in at $294,000 that Barb talked about. Housing, they got some big projects there, about $780,000. Golden Town, the work of $200,000. Long-term care and transportation services for like $500,000 for the Grey Road 4 job that's coming forward. So that you're seeing a decrease this year on our, what I call our reserve funds that you have control of and can make decisions on, that it's decreasing about $5 million this year, but there's a lot of things going on. But that's why you'll see other years where I'll be putting money away and you'll see those reserves building. So we try to, many of the directors here have talked about having life cycle reserves and building conditions assessments. Those we look at 30 years, and we're trying to make sure that we do not have in those 30 years big decreases or big negative reserves that we can't rally around, that we, you know, I don't mind seeing them dip a little bit, but they got to come back and we can use our overall portfolio though. But that's what we're basing how much we put away and how much we draw out based on those building condition assessments that have a 30-year reserve fund study attached to them, plus our own life cycles on our vehicles and et cetera. So that's really what the comment I wanted to make about reserves. So.
Councillor Swaber.
Yes, looking at chart that was prepared by, and I think I sent it to you, on the net financial assets per household. So I see that for Grey County, it's decreased over the last 3 years slightly, whereas most of the other municipalities, except for Owen Sound, have gone up. And obviously, there was some quite substantial capital spending, which was a little bit higher the one year. But that doesn't seem to be a lot of wiggle room.
No, and the other thing we want to look at with that is it's using our current depreciation schedules that we have in there. And I said we want to bring a report back on that because I think those are in some cases we're depreciating our assets too fast, and then that's hurting that ratio there on us. So we're bringing that back. We've met, our asset management coordinator has met with each of the departments, we're reviewing those. We want to make sure that we're not, for example, buildings we had on it 40 years, and the existing administration buildings way more than that, and we're still here in good shape. So we're looking at that. So in saying that, we're depreciating those assets at that rate, which they're being used longer than that. So we want to get a true life cycle of actual use. This is when you're actually, so I hope we can demonstrate that, that'll improve that figure on that. So, yeah, so it looks a little bit different based on what we're seeing when we take our building conditions and stuff, and those figures, and see when the consultants say, this component of your building needs to be replaced versus what the amortization is telling us. So we need to get those kind of closer together, and that's what we're working on. So I hope to improve that number. We have to keep an eye on that. It's a good statistic to look at.
And our reserves aren't really that high on a per household basis, so.
So we keep putting money away and we're drawing, yeah. So we'll have to, like I said, we're looking at those BCAs, we're looking at our life cycles of our equipment and that, and keep trying to maintain those as best we can. But we haven't had a lot of big projects come at us here, and we've been drawing down. So we'll have to start seeing direction go the other way and start building back up. So.
Councilor Mill?
May I say, that's quite a change from what I used to get on reserve standing here. I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I was just going to commend Kevin. You've done a tremendous job here, and for a guy that cheers for the Detroit Red Wings, you always do such a tremendous job on this budget, and I just want to thank you very much, and indeed all of the staff for the job they've done. I think it's remarkable.
Thank you, and like, it's the staff support I have and the directors and stuff, they all commit to I have had some good ideas put forth in the next budget document, and I will take those into consideration. I think that can add value to this budget, so we'll work on that, and we'll keep trying. It's not perfect, and I'm not perfect. We've got lots to work to do here, so, but yeah, I do appreciate the support here, and I get very nervous for presenting this budget every year, and I've done it a while, but I feel a huge responsibility to you here, and I want to gain your trust, and I don't want to lose that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we need to have a motion.
We do.
Yes. I'm looking for a motion to, I guess, approve the budget as presented by Councillor Milne, seconded by Councillor Klumpus.
So it'll be, have I got this right?
Just there was
Amended?
2 items that we brought up there today that need changed, and that one was the audio and video
Oh,
that we
right,
need
yes.
an extra 20,000. Then there was the gray ag request of 10,000, and we'll fund those from reserve and keep that 1.75 in place then, if council is so willing to pass this motion.
Is everyone able to read the motion that before us? I should say, is there anyone that can't? All right, any discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? It's carried. Wow,
Thank you very much.
bravo. Okay, do we have any other business? Councilor Queen?
Last week when we had our winter event and all the county roads were closed, I did have some concern raised to myself and maybe others with regards to who closes Grey County roads. You know, and one of the discussions was from the Beaver Valley Ski Club, and the manager, general manager there was asking me a number of questions, and was, because, you know, the provincial, or some of the other highways were closed, and certainly the Duke Valley Ski Club is right on a county road. What were they to do? So they said they went to the OPP and they couldn't find any information, and it was basically the information that was coming out was from the radio. All Grey County roads were closed. So I guess moving forward, and maybe through, you know, preparation for the next event, I guess how does that work? Who takes it off? Who makes that choice? You know, is it a blanket, you know, event? I think later on that evening, it most of the county roads were open, except there was some. Grey Road 13 was one that was still closed from Kimberley, I think, to Meaford or whatever it was. So I've had more than one question: is how does that work?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Warden, yeah, the OPP closes the roads. That being said, the last closure was peculiar in that actually, we didn't find out from the OPP either. We actually heard it on the radio as well. So we're having a meeting tomorrow, kind of a storm debrief, and we're going to talk to the police, because there is some of those things where they might not know, or whoever decided to close the road might not be thinking about 6th Street and Owen Sound. You know, whereas some of those closures are pretty serious to people that live here. So, yeah, we're going to look into that a little more, because a blanket closure is tough. It hasn't happened very often. But yeah, we're going to be working with them, trying to kind of get things a little more clear.
Report back.
Just to go hand in hand with that, when they did put it on the radio, the way it sounded was that all roads in the county were closed. So just to bring that up with them as well.
If I can just add, there are a number of players here. There's the police, there's dispatch, there's our own staff. Something happened in the communication between the parties this last time, and we don't know if it's because there's been a number of personnel changes, but certainly there's a defined protocol of what's supposed to happen. It wasn't followed, and so I think that'll be really the poor point of the meeting is that, you know, either the protocol needs to change and work for everyone, or the protocol needs to be adhered to. So we will let you know.
To follow up with that, Mr. Warden, I guess some of the queries I had was people had nowhere to go to find out the current information, like websites or phone calls. It was blank, 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 and that was the frustration part too, is knowing it. Other than I don't know how the radio knew. Somehow they were getting their information. So,
Jody?
Through you, Mr. Warden. So again, if that process had been followed, if it's normal operation hours, then our own staff update our website through that municipal 511 program that we had talked about here. So any changes that are logged there will show up on our website. And after hours, it's Owen Sound Police Dispatch that handle those calls for us. So as soon as we had some information that we could put on the website, we put it there as well. As far as other details like road conditions, that will get pushed to the radio stations or to the Bayshores website anyways, so they can pick up what we enter on our website and kind of propagate that message.
I think part of it was maybe people weren't. I think the office was closed, so you probably weren't here updating the website because you weren't here. So I guess that's the thing, is can it be done remotely? I mean, certainly everybody's at home, can't go anywhere. It's probably the best thing. It keeps everybody safe. But people do go to websites today. They look for stuff because of these don't stop working. So it just, so criticism anywhere. It's just, I've had queries. I'm sure other people had queries. You know, proactively, where do we, you know, how we move forward. That's all.
Yeah, and I would just add, we were working on that one, even though we were home. Like you say, your phones don't shut off. And the big issue around this event was just getting information at all. As Pat said, we didn't know that the roads had been closed by OPP. And as soon as we did have information, we did put it on. But that was fairly late as well. So.
The other thing is liability. Because who makes that decision that if something happens, or you know what happens, people start pointing the finger if something serious happens. So we have to protect ourselves on liability-wise, too. So I think there's a lot of factors that we have to.
Okay. Sorry, Councilor Mackey, I forgot.
Ward. Well, I'm glad you raised that question, Mayor McQueen. Councillor Woodbury mentioned in regards to our lower municipality roads, Pat, you said that the OPP closed, the county roads. So does that authority extend to our roads? Because I thought we were making the decision to close our municipal roads.
I actually don't know I'm assuming the OPP does yours as well. We can close ours if we were so determined, like with a construction project or something, but typically weather-related is always OPP for us.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not, like, we followed suit with the county and the municipality of Chatsworth, but you question, when the OPP shut certain highways, it's based on geography, and, the county's a big area, and why would they just carte blanche shut down the whole county when there may be sections that are okay? So I think there certainly needs to be a fair bit of communication in regards to this.
We are committed to that single point of reference for everyone. We want people using the website and the municipal 511 information. We don't want information in multiple locations, especially when it's going to potentially conflict with one another. That just doesn't give the public a good feeling at all, and that's what happened this time, so.
Hey, any other business? Seeing none, moving on to item 7, notice of motion. Any notices of motion? And seeing none? Motion to adjourn, Councillor Mill, seconded by Councillor McQueen. Yes. Good timing, yes. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried, thank you.